Hello, and welcome back to another edition of A Political Insight by TVC22. I'm your host, Thomas Stockton. Today, we're going to be continuing with our introductions to the year 2022. Last week, we spoke to the new Warden of the United Counties of Prescott Russell, Mr. Daniel Lafleur, and today we speak with the Mayor of the City of Clarence-Rockland, Mr. Mario Zant. So without waiting any further, let's bring Mr. Zant on screen. Mayor Zant, how are you doing? Thank you very much for accepting the offer to come chat today.
I'm doing great. It's good to see you again, Thomas.
Good stuff. Mezan, if you don't mind, I'd like to actually start with the events that occurred yesterday. We're speaking today on what is the 27th, I want to say, of
Yeah.
January. And yesterday was Bell Let's Talk Day, an initiative that really started up to be able to encourage people to open up and speak about their mental health, removing the stigma that often still surrounds mental health issues and illnesses. You yourself, as the mayor of the city of Clarence-Rockland, put a public message out on your Facebook page. It was shared out by the social media pages of the city as well, talking a little bit about the day, but also putting out a deeply personal message as well that sort of, to say the least, very much fit in what the theme of the day was, which was being open and unafraid to talk about some stuff. So first of all, I just wanted to say my condolences based on some of the elements of that message. And second of all, as someone who is in a public office, someone who is visible to the members and residents within the municipality, how important is it to you to ensure to be a role model in that sense, to be able to openly and visibly talk about mental health issues?
Well, first off, thanks for bringing that up, Thomas. It wasn't an easy write because obviously I don't think it's ever easy for anyone to share their personal information, openly. But I do believe that we have a role to play as far as community leaders. We um, routinely encounter citizens who speak to us about their issues, who want more information on services available and that sort of thing, which we're obviously limited in what we can do because the healthcare system is provincial. But it is important that once you have a voice, that you use it for something really good. And my whole job yesterday was essentially to say, listen, we're all suffering in certain areas. The pandemic has made it worse, but we have a role to play with each other and in just being respectful and just checking in. I check in with a lot of friends, and I was going to write that almost to a fault. And I don't even know if they're probably like, man, this is annoying. But I check in just to make sure, you're doing okay and you're important in my life. And I'm happy that you exist. It was just a really important thing for me to put out there.
Yeah, and you mentioned there obviously healthcare is provincial and it kind of limits what one can do on a community level. But looking at the community level, what are some of the things that can be done within our communities to help those that are potentially struggling and maybe even negate them before they even come into real existence for some people?
That's a tough question. I think that, and it could be seen as many, many different areas of assistance. We have a great medical center. Obviously, we have great professionals in the city. It's not to say that the wait lists are not, incredibly long. And as far as preventing it, I think that's mostly on their personal level. I'm really not sure what happens in anyone's homes to be able to see how they can be prevented. We have, I know for youth, we have the Rockland Youth Hub. They're incredible. They provide so much assistance to youth around, and I strongly encourage anyone that has kids that are suffering right now from mental health or just transitioning into adulthood or having issues at school. I mean, the Rockland Youth Hub is a great place for youth. As far as adults are concerned, obviously the wait lists are still there, and there's not much as a city that we can do for that. Um, but yeah, I think if we just tone down some of the rhetoric sometimes, and then just remember that we're all human, we're all trying to get around, we're all trying to live our lives, and if we can get some support in doing that, that's great. I have amazing support. Like I said in the letter in the statement that I issued yesterday, I've been going through this since I was 17. I think when I first ran for office, just the thought of giving a speech in front of 600 people was enough to just make my mouth go insanely dry. But yeah, that's when I noticed I didn't really have anxiety about that. I guess I found my comfort zone. I'm comfortable speaking to people. I'm comfortable doing interviews like this. I'm comfortable being out there and open. And so, for me, I was very lucky in the sense that I was able to find that ability to walk that line. But there's so many other people who can't. So yeah, let's just be there for one another. Be kind.
Yeah, as you mentioned there are a lot more services. The services for children versus adults are very different. And I guess that is the whole point of the Bell Let's Talk Day, as much as anything else, is to reduce that stigma, especially in adults who may be waiting on very long waiting lists to receive some help as well. Touching on the children element of it, we know that there has been a vast amount of change towards the impacts on children's own mental health and the things that they're struggling through with the social isolation that's come from the COVID-19 pandemic. We know that Ontario, with the number of weeks that the schools were closed for, was one of the highest per capita in any of the Western countries, up to say the least. Pardon me. In your opinion, I know there's been much debate around this, and health experts, you and I aren't two of them, but health experts all debate back and forth as to what the right thing is. But where do you view it as the mayor of the city of Clarence-Rockland, but also as a father, as to the situation with schools? Do you think children should be back in them? Do you think they should be open?
Well, listen, that's again, that's going into a direction that I don't want to overstep either. I mean, we have a Eastern Ontario Health Unit as well as the provincial government mandating that. I do believe that. Look, I'll be honest. There are some things that have been happening throughout this pandemic that leaves me scratching my head. I don't understand why certain things happen, but again, I'm not sitting around that table at the provincial government making those decisions. So we have to work with what we've got. Do I think that children need to be able to see each other? Absolutely. It is crucial for their development. It's crucial for their circle of friends. It's just not the same having a meeting, with your friends online.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I think for an adult, I personally enjoy working from home. I can't say that I personally miss too many of my colleagues, mostly because I didn't really work with them all that much. But for me, I enjoy the working from home. I do not enjoy seeing our businesses shut down. I do not enjoy any of that. I think it just these decisions sometimes being made without telling us exactly why they were made. I can understand if the pandemic was fueled by eating in restaurants. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. We don't have that information. So it's just frustrating all around. And I know a lot of children are suffering right now because of this. It looks like we're about to reopen on the 31st. I'm looking forward to being able to get back out and eat in restaurants again, and supporting our local businesses.
Yeah, and I think it all ties in together, doesn't it? And going from the social isolation and its impacts on mental health, and then to being able to come outside and participate in activities, whether they be, as you say, socializing in a restaurant, dining out, or even going and playing sport or watching sport, and that kind of stuff, and the positive impacts that can have on mental health. Touching on it there, you mentioned working from home. What kind of impact do you foresee that sort of shift in working culture having on a city like Clarence-Rockland, which is in the process of growing and is sort of moving away from that smaller town to bigger city aspect already? Like, how are we going to work towards helping grow the city and grow businesses when so many people are shifting towards wanting to work in their homes?
It's not going to be easy. We can't push back against innovation. There are things that are happening right now that are shifting us in a certain direction. Pushing back all the time, you just can't grow. As far as anything to do with the city, obviously the mayor or council does not run the city. The city is run by the CAO, and so it'll be her decision to decide, what I guess policy is put in place, or is requested to council to approve to be put in place, I should say. But at the end of the day, that aspect is going to be directed by Mrs. Collier. With regards to anything in general, I mean, there are so many opportunities to turn buildings that are not needed into affordable housing, which is a huge crisis right now, and we'll touch base on that a little later as well. There are so many opportunities to be able to think differently, think outside the box, innovate. And I'm looking forward to having those conversations with other political leaders, have the conversation with council as well as the administration to just find out what we can do. Can we use this in a positive way? It's been such a horrible thing. So many people have lost their lives. So many people have been impacted. Businesses have closed. It's been a horrible 2 years. But there could be some opportunities here to shift the way that we think, and I'm hoping that to have those conversations soon.
Yeah, I think actually you mentioned affordable housing there, so that might be a perfect time to sort of transition over to another element of this conversation, which is your time with the United Counties of Prescott Russell so far, being the mayor of the city of Clarence-Rockland. You sit at that table with, well, virtually at the moment, I suppose, again, as everyone's gone back into doing things from home a little bit more. Affordable housing is something that does fall under the remit of the United Counties too. I know that there is a report coming in a little bit, but what do you see some of the solutions in our area for this crisis that we're facing at the moment?
Well, first of all, for just the numbers in Clarence-Rockland, I mean, there was over 700 families, over 200 seniors on the wait list just in Clarence-Rockland. The county's level, much greater, obviously. And so we really have to put our heads together and come up with some solutions. But I think that, actually, I don't think, I know the solution needs to come from the provincial government, in the sense that they need to provide builders with programs as incentives to be able to build affordable housing. If I'm a builder, I'm going to build what the population wants. And if the population wants luxurious condos, if the population wants apartments versus condos or townhouses, those are all things that builders actually do on a regular basis. They look out at the market, they are prepared to build whatever the demand is. That said, it is leaving so many people behind. So our hands are a little tied as far as what we can do as a city. What I hope to do is lend my voice to the counties to be able to say, this is a real issue. All of the mayors of the counties understand this is an issue, by the way, it's no secret. But it provides us with a little bit of opportunity to discuss that innovation that I was talking to you about earlier. How are we going to move forward? What are we going to do? What is our plan? And it's not a plan that can take 3 years to come to fruition. We need this now. Families need it now. And a wait list of thousands is just not something that's sustainable. It's not like it's going to go down. It's just going to keep going up. And the more the prices of houses are going up to $750,000 and more, those are causing real pressures and issues for families. And we need to be able to look into that. So I'm going to continue to push the provincial government and speak to my provincial colleague as well as my federal colleague to be able to come up with a solution that perhaps we can present to the provincial government and say programs are what's needed for incentives for builders right now.
Yeah, strong voice needed, absolutely, in terms of pushing for that for many people locally who are affected. Whilst we're on the United Counties of Prescott Russell, can you give us a little insight into some of the projects that are ongoing there, some of their priorities? We did speak to Warden Lafleur last week about some of the main topics that the United Counties are looking at, from the residents Prescott Russell to the safety and well-being plan as well. But what are some of the projects you've seen that may be affecting people in Clarence-Rockland as well?
Right now, honestly, the 17 is obviously owned by the, I won't say owned, my apologies, is managed by the counties of Prescott Russell. We have at the city, I've put forward, one of the first things I did as mayor was put forward a motion that council adopted to form a committee or task force to review exactly what's going on with the 17. The 17 has been used for a political toy for over 30 years. My goal is not to politicize it. It's to say, okay, we've talked about this enough. We know it's there. We know what the problems are. We know who wants in and who wants out. We know who wants nothing to do with it. And what this committee is going to do, or this task force is going to do, is eventually put some resources at the table, some engineers to be able to come up with a solution, not necessarily by widening it, but looking at everything. Do we need more avenues into Ottawa? Do we need more do we need more streets or local streets leading into that? If I'm thinking of Baseline to Innis, for example. So those are conversations that, as a mayor, I want to be able to have with the city of Ottawa and bring them to the table and say, this is an issue for us. To have two roads, whether it's the 17 or the 417, the only way in and out of Eastern Ontario is not something that I'm willing to put up with, to tell you the truth. We are one of the largest untapped areas as far as land development or growth and businesses, and we are one of the most francophone areas left in the area. And we're not really being utilized by a lot of companies, because once they go to Ottawa, they stop going east, and then they just bypass us and go to Montreal. So those are one of the things that obviously the UCPR is involved in. We're finishing the building of the new Prescott Russell residence, which I believe will be open, I would say maybe in about another year and a half, if I'm not mistaken. So the UCPR's priorities, obviously we've signed off on the budget, and the budget's been adopted, so we're good on that. I also use those areas to be able to push through the things that we need to do in our municipality. Le Centre Roger Séguin is another one that is trying to be built. Infrastructure Ontario has earmarked some money. So has the counties earmarked. I think it's $500,000 a year over the life of, I think it's 20 or 25 years, if I'm not mistaken. And my goal is to be able to negotiate with them a little bit more. I want that money up front so that we can put shovels in the ground. Roger Séguin is an anchor to our community, and it needs to be rebuilt. And so we're making inroads on that. It's obviously always slow going. It's government. There's a lot of negotiations that need to happen. But that's in a nutshell some of the bigger items that we're working on. Obviously, the counties as a whole, the warden would know more about it. So obviously, you've met with Warden Lafleur, so he would know more about it because he's center to the counties. And what I try to concentrate on is the county business, as well as what's good for the citizens of Clarence-Rockland.
Absolutely. If you don't mind, I'd like to dive in a little bit further with something that you just said there, because maybe a lot of residents don't quite understand that breakdown. When we talk about this new residence, Prescott Russell, the long-term care centre opening in Hawkesbury, it's a United Counties one. It's one for the Prescott Russell region specifically, and managed by, the project is led by them as well. But when we start looking at the long-term care centres we have in our municipality here in Clarence-Rockland, where does the responsibility lie for those? And like in terms of maintenance, in terms of, as you say, in terms of repairs, growth, ensuring they have everything they need, where does that sort of breakdown occur?
Well, the Centre d'accueil Roger Séguin is a nonprofit home, so it's a little different than the other ones, which seem to be privately owned. And I think you've touched base on that for the Prescott Russell residence. That is owned and operated by Prescott Russell, and they all obviously all of these homes, regardless of who they're owned by, the vast majority of us might end up in one of those homes at one point in time. So we need to be able to continuously look into improving these, bringing more into our communities. I remember, when I was running for office in 2014, there was a big conversation about, retirement homes, because these are jobs that don't get shipped to other countries. These are jobs that are, for the most part, well-paying jobs. They stay here. And I think for Clarence-Rockland to be a hub of those, I think would be a great idea. But if we go back to the Centre d'accueil Roger Séguin, it's so important to be able to move forward with that project. And the provincial government has, like I said, put up some funding for it. But as always, it's dependent on other funding, and the funding that I'm trying to secure from the Prescott Russell, from the United Counties, I should say, is essentially to be able to have that money up front, be able to put shovels in the ground and get that building built.
And what's the timeline we're looking on that at the moment, Mayor Zant?
I am trying to get this done as fast as possible, but to give you a timeline would be impossible to do at this point. There's still a lot of negotiating that needs to happen. The A few of the mayor, actually all of the mayors, know of what I want to accomplish out of this. The administration knows as well, and we're just going to continue doing what we can to make sure that we get this built.
Yeah, I've just got a couple of other questions on the topic of healthcare before we start moving on to some other stuff. Obviously, with the pandemic that we're living through at the moment, it's virtually impossible to not be able to separate healthcare from virtually every conversation we have. But the UHU just published the other day another press release that is now encouraging everyone who is eligible to go and get that third booster dose. Understandably, again, as we mentioned earlier, neither you or I are health experts, and we are trying to listen to them. But understandably, a lot of residents are feeling apprehensive, perhaps is the best word, about having to get a third dose, a third shot, and it's always that one more thing to help. How do you feel about the way in which this is going about at the moment, and what would you say potentially to some of your residents at the moment who are feeling a little bit confused, to say the least, by these ever-changing rules and guidelines in the medical landscape?
So I would say, first of all, our city is managing one of the best vaccination centers in the area. And if you haven't been to check it out, you should go. It is incredibly well organized. It was used as a model in other areas as well because it just runs so efficiently. So a huge thanks to our community to be able to do that. And look, I mean, it is a confusing, like I said, a confusing time. We are, being bombarded with information from every single source, whether it's news, social media, blogs. People are for it, people are against it. I was told one time that they weren't getting the shot because they didn't know what was in the shot. Uh, we don't know what's in a Big Mac, but we seem to eat that okay. So I mean, we don't know what's in cigarettes really, but people still smoke them. So I think there's no excuse in today's age not to be educated on something, but define education in the sense that everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Am I in favor of people losing their jobs because they're not vaccinated? No. Am I in favor of people doing their part, as I have and my family has, to do their part to try to get this gone? 100%. I know how frustrated it is. And even when they said you need a booster, I was like, oh, and I hate needles, by the way. So when they were told, I was like, I don't want another shot. But I went and got my third shot because it's essentially it's a booster. It's a booster of the same thing I got last time, so it can't be any worse. But even Pfizer came out and said it is absolutely impossible to think that we can vaccinate the entire planet every 6 months, and I completely agree with that. We're going to have to learn how to deal with this. We're going to have to learn how to live with this. Our businesses cannot keep shutting down. Our kids cannot keep being hibernated because they can't see their friends. We cannot keep. Some of us cannot keep working from home. I hope I do. But it's such a difficult thing to do. I mean, putting a solid policy on top of a population is one of the hardest things to accomplish because a city or a city or a group of people in general are they're going to do what they want to do, and so it's just a complicated situation to be in. But we're going to issue the shots for as long as the province and the federal government says that we have to, and whoever takes it, and whoever doesn't. But at some point, we're going to have to move on and figure out how we're going to live with this. It's doubtfully going away.
Absolutely. And obviously, to everyone listening here, head to the EOHU's website for the latest updates and guidance from our own local health centre.
I just want to say, though, I am not a physician, by the way. These are my personal comments. They should not be. Anyway, you know what I'm saying, but that's just my personal comments on that. It's very when you start
Absolutely.
dealing with health. So.
No, no, absolutely. Which is again encouragement to head off to the actual website for the health unit to find out exactly what they're advising and more details. They're very responsive to their emails too. If you have any
For sure.
inquiries, Mezan, just one last on the healthcare front. We had a question submitted from a local resident asking: Is the city planning to promote or mandate AEDs, public access defibrillators, for all businesses in the city of Clarence-Rockland?
Okay, so I would say promote, perhaps. Mandate, I don't think we have the authority to mandate businesses to have them. I could be wrong. That's a very good question. What I'm going to do is I'll get back to you with an answer and I'll post it on your Facebook page below the question once I have it. But thank you for
Wonderful,
the
thank
question.
you.
It's a very good question.
Yes, not an issue, absolutely. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that and make sure we link it when anyone's watching this interview. That should be down in the comments below. There's another question from the public, but that will be able to be tied in to a next section, which really is casting our eyes towards 2022 that we are in now, but at the very beginning of it. So Mayor Zant, what is 2022 going to look like for the city of Clarence-Rockland? And what are some of the priorities that you have on the table?
So the priorities are essentially the budget. The budget, is the priorities. The priorities are obviously roads is always top of mind. This year we're spending over $5 million in roads. We're finishing up the expansion to our water treatment plant. We will be looking eventually at increasing the drinking water capacity. We have snow dumps that needs to be dealt with, and snow dumps are quite expensive. They can range from $6 to $8 million just for a piece of land to dump some snow on, and those are all mandated by the province. We don't really have a choice in those. But if you were to ask me what other priorities are, obviously affordable housing is one of them that I spoke earlier. We're going to start a task force on that. We're going to look at what other municipalities are doing. We're going to look at ways to innovate our ability to manage the situation. And we may even look at ways to change the planning to allow, I know other municipalities have, to allow tiny homes or different homes that are in people's backyards. So those are things that we have to start thinking of, because the pricing of housing is becoming incredibly high and unreachable for many people. And so all of those things tie into preventing homelessness and preventing mental health and preventing, those other topics that we spoke to. Everything ties into one another. Another, huge priority for me, and as well as the council, is the environment. We have amazing forests in this area. We also have laws that says that developers are allowed to develop those, and without development, we don't grow. And if we don't grow, then we charge more taxes to manage what we need to manage with the smaller population. So we do encourage growth, but it has to be smart growth. And so what I would love to do is to have that conversation with some individuals within our department and our city to say, okay, well, let's start redoing what our percentages are for growth. Do we have to have 15 or 10% high density? Could it be bigger than that, because we're trying to prevent this constant shaving of our forests and growth out? Can we start building up a little bit? I understand some people may look at that and go, but I moved to Rockland because it was a small town, and it still can be a small town, but growth has to happen responsibly. And I really want to be involved and engaged in that conversation to make sure that we're not just growing for the next year or two, but for the next 10 to 20 years. What is our goal, and what do we want to do? Do we want to just build just because we can, or do we want a vision to actually say, here's how we want the city to look like in the next 10 to 20 years? And I think that is a huge, huge question to ask our administration to do.
So when you say there it can remain a small town whilst expanding, are we thinking more building up then rather than building out?
Well, it depends who you ask about small town, right? So someone moving in from Ottawa, this is a small town. Someone who was born and raised in Rockland and saw Morris Village grow, it's no longer a small town. So it depends on your view and what your perspective is on what a small town feel is. We have, like I said, we've got immense growth potential, but we have to do it smart. And there are some serious developments about to come in that are slated. There is Regional Group, which is going to be building probably by the time that it is done, probably in the next 30 to 40 years. This will take a long time to complete. But the entire area from Pagot all the way to Landry, that entire forest on the north side is slated to be developed. We have, Brigitte coming up on the hill on Poupal that'll be developing. We've got stage 5, 6, and possibly 7 of Moore's Village still to grow. So there are a lot of areas that are going to be growing, but we have to do it smartly. We have to be able to say, does this fit in to what our vision is as a city? And what we need to do is actually sit down as a council and decide what exactly is that vision going to be.
Absolutely. I remember speaking with a concerned resident in Morris Village, actually, who didn't think that the area of forest with this frozen pond that residents use to skate on during the winter was going to be developed, but they've recently found out that that is supposed to be developed. And I believe there have been residents that have brought this up towards the council as well. And that should be a conversation that's going to occur in the next few weeks, is it not?
Right. So I'd like to clarify a couple things. So the builder, from what I understand, is not interested in developing, not anytime soon. That's what I've been told. I don't know who put the note up. There's somebody who put a note up to contact us to tell us not to cut down the forest. We as a city do not cut forests. The official plan is created. It is approved by the counties. It is based on provincial laws of how much percentage a city can grow and how much percentage, or rather how much can actually use to span out its city. So all of that actually has a huge issue with developing future developments and homes. But that specific area that people are talking is not slated for development as far as I know. But I will say it is private property. Do not go there. If something ever happens to you, you could be in a lot of trouble with insurance issues. So there is one natural forest that we have right now. It's called Parc Paul Simoneau. It is right on Saint Joseph. And that is an area that is forested, that is owned by the city. It's a natural park. We also have, obviously, Forêt La Rose, which can be used by anyone, and it is a massive park. So, I mean, there are things that need to be said about using that forest, and I really would not go in there. Just because there are trees, it belongs to someone.
Very good point to be made, and very good to highlight for some people that may have been having that question there, and especially pointing people towards the Forêt La Rose, which is a fantastic thing we've got in our area as well. Mayor Zant, the last really thing I wanted to look at as we come into casting our eyes and our minds towards 2022 is that this is an election year after all. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, for sure, are you still running for mayor again this year?
Well, as you know, I'm a public servant, so I can't necessarily say for sure until all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, but that is my intention.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you specifically about, and something that maybe some residents have been curious about as well, is regarding the fact that the election period starts, people put their candidatures, whether it be towards mayor or towards councillors, but the council remains in session. There are still meetings. So how do you ensure, as the local mayor and the local politicians, to make sure that the council is still best serving the people rather than serving themselves in a time where they're could be looking for election?
That's a really good question, Thomas. I've been on so far. Well, I ran in 2014 and was elected, so I wasn't on that council then. But I was on the council in 2018 when obviously there was an election in 2018. Everyone was really professional and behaved during that time. So there were no issues, but there were also no two people from the same council running against each other. At the time, it was Mayor Desjardins who ran against a private citizen. And so that could be a little different. I'm really not sure exactly what the dynamics are going to be with this coming year, But you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, we're paid by the citizens to do a job, and that job is to stick to the topics of the agenda and to put through and adopt and debate the city's business. And that is what we intend to do. There are other municipalities. I know the city of Toronto shuts down their council meetings throughout the last bit of the election campaign. And that prevents, I guess, bickering back and forth. But it's something that maybe that we'll look at. I'll have a conversation with council on those options, because I want to make sure that exactly that we continue doing the city's business and not bring the election campaign into council's day-to-day business.
And what are the dates for these elections again this year?
I believe it's October 22nd is election day. Candidacies can be put in May 1st. And there's a date in July, and I haven't looked at the new dates because obviously these dates change every cycle. But there's a date in July that's going to be your final. You're either in or you're out. Mm-hmm. I do want to encourage people who are listening, to get involved. If you don't want to commit to running a campaign, it does cost a lot of money to run a campaign, and you don't get your money back if you lose. So I don't believe that the province makes that easy on cities to be able to run campaigns effectively. But at the end of the day, I think it's important for citizens to be involved. I believe that committees as well will be, once the election is done and the new council is sworn in, committees are usually formed. Those are great ways for individuals and citizens to get involved in committees. And that gives you kind of like a better idea of how council works and if you actually want to move up to that next step. But it is a rewarding job. I can tell you I would not be seeking re-election if I didn't enjoy what I do. I love public service and I love serving the citizens of the city. So at the end of the day, that's my priority.
And whilst we're on that topic, actually, I'll take on the other question I received from the public, from Monsieur Savourin. When will the council allow for live questions from constituents, whether you remain doing council meetings online or in person? And obviously, having remained online at the moment, as an additional part to that question, I'm going to ask you, do you have any plans for the city of Clarence-Rockland to return to in-person council meetings?
So my first priority is not to put any members of our administration, the members of public, or our council at risk. So that's number one. When this pandemic seems to be on its way out, when we can come up with better ways of meeting, perhaps it's going to be a hybrid motion in where the administration can come in on Teams and we can be there in person. I want to get back in person. I enjoy that contact with individuals. I want to be there to answer those questions. So I think it's important to be able to get back in person. This is one of those jobs that you cannot do forever remotely. But I can't give you an answer until I find out exactly what this pandemic is going to do, if there's going to be more variants that are going to come out, what the Eastern Ontario Health Unit is going to say. But I can't wait to get back in person and see citizens face to face again, for sure. Thank you for the question, Ben.
And is there a way in which that if it remains online, there can be questions submitted from the public? I mean, I know we're quite far down the virtual rabbit hole of doing it a certain way so far. And I guess, as you say, our eyes and our minds are being cast towards a return to in-person. But upon a world where we remain virtual, are there plans to be able to receive live questions from the public?
There are no plans right now, but it is something that I've been asking around to see if we could do. We do allow questions. If you've ever attended a planning meeting, there are people who ask questions at planning meetings. There are people who ask questions at minor variance committee. So I know that it can be done. I think it's definitely something that we're going to be looking at. But right now, we don't want to go through the process of introducing a way to be able to ask questions only if we're going to be virtual for another month or two. I mean, we have only meetings every second week anyway. So it's a lot of work to be able to put these things in place. And I know some people like to watch our meetings on Facebook Live, but the amount of people of the administration behind the scenes that are making this all possible is a lot. There are a lot of people involved in bringing meetings live just to make sure that everything is good and everything is set. So Yeah, I mean, I would love to have questions live, through Facebook Live, but unfortunately, we're going to wait until we can see a little bit more with this pandemic. I don't want to try to get the administration to put through a whole program to be able to do this only to dismantle it because we're going back in person. So it is my goal to go back in person as soon as possible.
And finally, just the last one on councils there. What about translation services, whether that be, again, virtual or in person? I know there are a few residents, whether it be English to French or French to English, who, although the councillors, as is declared in a message, answer in the language of their choice, is often a language that some residents do not understand.
Yeah, you're right, and those are things that we've spoken about. It is complicated because we are such a bilingual city, and most of the we all speak French. All the councillors speak French. Most of the city staff speak French as well, and so we're trapped in that it's a catch-22 essentially, right? So if I speak in French, then our Anglophone population don't understand, and vice versa with our Francophone population. So we are looking at ways to translating, but again, it's trying to figure out, are we translating Facebook Live? Are we translating after the fact? Are we going to translate once we're back in person? There are so many questions right now, and we're sure not the only council right now with that question. I think every single mayor in Prescott Russell is dealing with you know, translation and language issues and different things. But yeah, at the end of the day, we're just trying to answer in the best way. We've done a lot of. I think we've improved a lot lately. We've really tried to make sure that what's said in English is repeated in French, and vice versa. But if we were to do every single thing word for word, our meetings would end at 1 o'clock in the morning. Not too many other people would be watching. So we're trying. And we will be in touch with the public once we actually figure out what we're going to do if this pandemic keeps going.
And Mezan, just one last question from the public received whilst you were giving that answer. It's from Daniel Gagné, asking, any idea when we will have a public French high school in Rockland?
A public French high school. So there is land that is owned by the French Public School Board. It's on the same piece of land right beside the Clarence-Rockland Arena on the 17th. To be honest with you, I really don't know because schools are built with provincial funds, and I have a feeling that after this pandemic is done, our province won't be the only one, but our province is going to have some serious deficits to get out of. So I'm really not sure exactly what that is planned for. But again, I can find out and post an answer on your Facebook page. But I'm not familiar with the school issues right now. That's probably more based on, or should be directed to the school board trustee.
That's great. Well, Mayor Zan, thank you very much for taking the time to have a little introductory chat for 2022 with us. We'll obviously come back and have some conversations about some of those specific details that were mentioned in this interview a little bit more in depth as the year goes on. But once again, thank you very much. And albeit it is the end of January, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year as well. Can we still say Happy New Year, or is it stops in February? Is that it?
I don't think we're supposed to, but I haven't seen you just yet, so we're going with
that. Happy New Year to you and your entire team, and thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you very much, Mayor Zant, right there. And thank you very much for watching this latest episode of A Political Insight by TBC22. We'll be back next week where we'll be speaking to the Member of Parliament for Glengarry Prescott Russell, Mr. Francis Drouin. Until then, thank you for watching. Goodbye.